What's going on?
What's going on?
How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good.
I feel like I'm either more. I don't know if I'm more excited for us to have another episode this week or the pack.
The pack is back.
Yeah,
The pack is back.
The pack is back. And then also, some teams barely survive week 3. We're going to check out week 4. So hang with us. We're going to do our intro, and we'll be right back with you. All right. Yes, I know Dennis has to be excited that he doesn't have just 2 teams to cheer for anymore.
no, I mean, I'll still cheering for my former pack teams, man. I love them. That's the always will be the real pack to me. That's the team I grew up watching. With half these teams, I'm like, I just remember you being on there. I just had no idea what conference you guys were even in. But,
Unfortunately, all the good ones are in the Big Ten now. So
yeah,
yeah, so now you're a Big Ten fan, is what you're saying.
Excuse me. Cal is in the ACC and they're doing phenomenal.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
that's very true. They're
I'm
actually
sorry.
doing a lot better than I thought they would. Better
Which
than
makes-
other like teams like FSU. And they had a lot of hype behind them.
Well, it makes absolutely no sense. Cal is in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
They
On the
conquered the
opposite
Pacific.
side.
They're like, let's go to Atlantic now.
Right.
Yeah.
It was 10 years ago. They
Need
over 10
to
years ago.
just go back. They need to just be like, Cal,
Yep.
come home.
Yep. I mean, they need 2 more teams. So so Dennis, since you are so much closer to pack and pack history, what do you think would be the other 2 teams that would make the most sense for them to bring in?
To make the most sense, obviously, I feel like you would have to bring in. It would be Cal and Stanford. I feel like that's a given. Honestly, though, for the way the pack is forming and the new teams, we said it in our own kind of text message chats and like that. What I would personally love to see the pack being is bringing 2 specific state schools, and that would be the Dakotas. More times than not, people have no idea where they're located.
True.
People will forget that state.
The Dakotas.
Yeah.
They must be close to the Pacific. I don't know.
You just don't know. Like, there got to be a river or something that connects them to. Like,
Are them those Canadian schools?
They
exactly.
talk with a weird accent.
So I would love those 2 schools specifically to be in the pack.
Mhm.
But to me, it would make the most sense to bring back at least 2 schools that I feel like have a rivalry within their own and has a very long history. Like the kick return of Cal. Like there's key moments when it comes to between Cal and Stanford. So I feel like bringing them back into the pack and still kind of keeping a little bit of that tradition that the pack was always known for would make the most sense.
Sure.
But for what it is now, I'm like, no, it's not what it used to be. I'm personally more of a fan to bring in North Dakota and South Dakota State.
Well, yeah, like we were talking about in the chat, like if they bring in 2 more state schools, then they'll only have state schools, which I think that means that they need to change their name. And I think you were saying that too.
Yes.
Like the Statesman Conference or something like that. Like that would be, I don't know. I think it would be really cool.
I'll be brokenhearted that the pack basically would not exist anymore.
Sure.
I'll be brokenhearted twice in the same year, but at least I would actually be looking forward to that. Like one of the smaller conferences, I would actually be really excited to watch that.
Sure. And I guess what were you going to say, Luke?
I was just going to say, and I've got a team. I've got my Boise State team coming in.
Oh, yeah.
My
Sure,
number 2 team. So
That blue
now
field, man.
I legitimately have a pack team that.
That's true. You got a pack team.
And there's no pack teams that I just flat out cheer against.
True.
Yeah,
it's true.
I'm happy about that.
So here's the thing, though, is it begs the question with the additions, with especially the G5 additions to the pack 2, or pack 6, or whatever we want to call it.
The 6-pack.
Minimum, the 6-pack. There you go. Does it automatically denote them from being a power conference? Because it was a power conference before, but now is it going to be group of 6 and power 4? Like, are they just going to be another group of conference? What do you guys think?
I think you almost have to. I mean, I hate it because obviously the pack that, like Dennis was bringing up, the tradition that they've had just kind of like the everybody, especially our age, younger people are not going to really think of this way, but our age, the Pac was something, right? You grew up, USC, UCLA, all these
Oregon.
teams, Oregon, that team out west. But you grew up with all those teams, but it's a different landscape now. It's totally different. So when you start bringing in and you start looking at these teams, and they're bringing in Boise State and Fresno State and San Diego State, as much as I love those teams, I think San Diego State has some of the best uniforms. I love their uniforms and color code, but they're not a power conference. There's no, if you start looking through and, you can do comparisons SEC to Big Ten, right? And you start off at the top and you say, okay, like if Georgia and Ohio State were to play, if Texas and, whoever's Texas. So if you start going through there, most of those conferences, at least the top two, are going to have pretty even comparisons all the way down. When you throw the Pac in there now, I mean, maybe you could compare them to the ACC the way it's looking now, with Florida State dropping another one, but they're just not there. They're not a power school.
See, what I would say to that is the fact that, like, for example, Cal and Stanford were some of the bottom teams of the Pac for the past few years, and that the fact that they're able to compete right now in the ACC, and even with a particular SEC team that loves to throw the ball to the other team, like the fact that they're competing in the ACC as, I don't want to say legitimate contenders, because by far they are not. That's like, I would very much be exaggerating and lying about that. I feel like I'm a Michigan fan at that point. That it kind of shows like, hey, you have that performance ability, but you are definitely you're being separated by the Big Ten and the SEC clearly, though.
Right.
But I feel like you can still compete versus the ACC almost. I don't want to say each team for team, but if you include probably the top 5, top 6, I feel like you do have some room to compete.
Sure. So what would it take? Because I don't think there's no actual rules as to, aside from like they just have to be one of the top conferences in the sense of like consistently vying for a national championship. What would it have to take for the new Pac or one of the other group of 5 to become one of the new power conferences? Would it require them to win the Natty once? Would they need to win the Natty a couple different times, or just show dominance in the playoffs over the next couple of years? What do you guys think?
I'll let you go first, Luke.
Well, the way that so if you thinking back, and I'm going to kind of stick with my Boise State example. When you go back to the year, I can't remember, it was at 2004 that they beat Oklahoma. Whenever maybe, I don't know. I'm bad with dates. I've slept since then. But when you go back and you look at that was really the start of kind of Boise State's, comeuppance, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
They start to kind of come up. They have a really good year. They beat Oklahoma. Obviously back then it was the BCS, so there's only 2 teams. So you kind of go, what is going on here? But all that to be said, it took them years and years and years and years after that for them to actually be seen as, okay, Boise State is now that team that can kind of put some power teams on their heels. And so I think it's not going to take just, I don't even think a natty. A natty is, okay, you had a bunch of injuries to Georgia and Texas and Ohio State and Ole Miss and UT, or, a couple weird ball bounces. I think that you're going to have to look at dominance. And I think that the way that the Pac does it is one team goes in and dominates the Pac and goes into playoffs year after year, wins 2 or 3, moves up, maybe plays for a national championship. So I think it's going to be one of those like 5 to 10 year trajectories of this is how the Pac comes back into relevance.
Sure.
I would agree. Like, for the most part, I feel like most of that, because you do make a good point. You got to make some relevance. I feel like in order to compete and be considered, part of for it to be, sorry, now I'm like blanking out, but having compete versus the bigger conferences, I feel like you would have to have at least 2 teams continuously make it to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
My reason for that, it's obviously a lot. I don't want to say a lot easier to compared to what Luke was saying, but it becomes more of the conference wise. And the reason I say that is because when ACC, typically you're expecting only one, maybe two teams to make it to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Big 12, they're thinking about maybe one. They're not even thinking a second one. They're like, hey, only one. So the fact that if the pack can include at least two teams every year to make it to the playoffs, then hey, by those standards, they should be considered a Power 5 team.
Sure. I'll give you guys one other like criteria that I think would allow people to make that shift. Because honestly, I agree with you, Dennis. I think I agree with actually both of you. Like having someone that's going to take 5-10 years probably from the point of, and you're going to see more than likely one particular team be that dominant force.
Sure.
But I agree with Dennis that you're going to need more than just one team to show dominance. But really, I think the other thing that I was just thinking about it while you guys were talking was like the other thing that is expected of Power 4 teams is just to beat up on Group of 5 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so arguably, now granted, you don't always expect every Power 4 team to beat up on a Group of 5 team, but
Vanderbilt, you're not doing what you're supposed to.
Vanderbilt did
Notre Dame.
Like they beat up on Power 4 teams. Weirdly enough,
they also lose to them.
Then they lose to them. Vanderbilt's just inconsistent, but that's an example of a team that's at the bottom rung of the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
They're still somewhat expected. Like, I mean, there's still a lot of people that are like, why did you lose to Georgia State? Like, seriously. Now, granted, they barely lost that game, but a loss is a loss.
Mm-hmm.
But you would need to see maybe if you've got 8 people in your conference, probably 6 of them need to consistently year in and year out be beating all of the Group of 5 opponents that they're playing.
I think the other thing that you think about here is now that some of these teams, now again, this is kind of a stretch, but now that some of these teams are in a power conference, that's going to help their recruiting. So are there people who now it's like and especially with NIL and with the fact that they can get paid, are there guys, take for me, for example, if it's like, oh, Ohio State doesn't want me. Okay, well, my next favorite team is Boise State. So, Hey, Boise State, what's going on? Like, it takes 2-3 of those guys to make that kind of choice and go, hey, I'd like to play in the pack. I'll play on Fresno State. Like, let's go. And that could really change the course. So, I mean, these guys now out there in the pack, it's time to start recruiting and use that to your advantage.
Sure. But, so do we have any other final thoughts about the pack itself and its reemergence?
Well, they're back in name, image, and likeness.
Likeness, I don't know about. Like,
I don't know about likeness. Yeah, name and image. So likeness is. We'll see about likeness.
Yeah. We'll have to see. And granted, we won't see that. What is it, 2026 or 2027? Or
I think I've seen 2026.
2026, and they still need to add those other 2 teams. So, so we'll see what happens. Obviously, I think their best bet is to get a Group of 5 team to come in. But I agree with you, Dennis. I think the most natural one would be Cal and Stanford. Just whether or not they can break a contract with ESPN and the ACC is another thing.
We'll send Washington and UCLA back.
Well, that's fair. There you go. I mean,
you can have them back.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That works. Anyways, so speaking of teams that didn't beat their Group of 5 opponents, let's do our week 3 recap. So who wants to talk about the sad game, the sad state of the game, FSU getting blown's the wrong word, by Memphis. Memphis was in control that entire game. There was no doubt about it. And it's not to knock Memphis. They're a great team. They've been a good team. They were a good team last year.
Yep.
But I mean, I think FSU is lucky if they go 1-11 at this point.
I mean,
like a team.
It's a very interesting DJU. Like he's a very interesting story because obviously he has stayed for a reason, right? He's stayed because draft stock wasn't there. NIL money. Well, because that's the only money he's going to get now. Like it used to me, like the past few years, it's always been like, okay, there's just too many guys ahead of him for him to really want to go in right now. And now it's like, you got a lot of work to do just to potentially get drafted at all.
I mean, I don't think he could even be on a practice squad. I don't think he's good enough.
Absolutely not.
I mean, we laugh. Like I think I sent you guys the meme of the guy that was playing. He's like, DJ Angalabadora, DJ Humanala.
Yeah.
And he's just overthrowing every time.
Everything.
I mean, it's just bad. And I mean, like, to be fair, that game, it looked good. Like it was a fun game to watch. And then you start realizing, oh, wait, this is FSU against Memphis. This is not supposed to be a fun game to watch. Like, this is not supposed to be a game that
it should be 40-3, and Memphis is destroying, or not Memphis, FSU is destroying Memphis. So, but that's not the only Florida school that had some trouble this weekend. Again, and the coach is, in the hottest seat of all hot seats. Good old Florida.
You think he's actually hotter than Norvell, though?
Oh, 100%.
Yes. 100%. Yeah. Because this isn't a 1 year thing. I mean, last year the off season was all about how awesome Norvell was, how great he was, how they should have been in there. He would have made waves with the teams that he had. So,
I mean, like that, like to me, like that downfall then is just like ridiculous. Like to be like another national championship, like competitive and everything like that, to go from top 10 to be the only school that was top 10 ranked to start with 3 losses.
Yeah.
Outside of COVID.
Yeah. No, I get you. Like it's the what Norvell has.
I think there were a lot more losses from COVID.
Yeah.
Well, there's
sorry, that was bad.
Really dark joke there. But the thing that's interesting though is that what Norvell is unfortunately proving, I think it's actually a good thing, but what he's really proving to the rest of especially casual fans, but also to other younger coaches, is you can't rely on the portal for everything. There are like, there's a reason why big programs have passed on big players, and it's because portal players don't always fit your culture. They might not also want to play like a team. I've noticed something just in it. Again, it's just one of those weird things. Like I've noticed a lot of the players that seem to be underperforming are the ones that are doing all these commercials for sports drinks and stuff like that. That have done all these crazy NIL deals. Because I see DJU on a lot of them, almost all of them.
I see him work being in a gas station, man.
Yeah.
I don't know what, like he's already practicing for his job.
Yeah.
Like, that's what things to be able to get.
You should move to New Jersey or to Oregon, where you are required to have an attendant pump your gas. It's just the portal additions are just not what you need to actually build proper roster strength and culture. Right. And Norvell is a decent recruiter, just has not properly recruited. It's not the same as the Colorado situation where you've got a coach that legitimately is refusing to recruit.
Right.
So, but to answer your question earlier, Danis, yes, Billy Napier is 100% on a much hotter seat. I am surprised he is not drowning in molten lava right now.
Yeah.
Considering the fact
we're like, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, considering the fact that the boosters have already gathered up his buyout. They've already gathered up his buyout. And so what I've been hearing, 27 billion.
Oh, that's not, I feel that should be easy then.
Oh, well, sure.
I mean, it's not 77. You're not paying Jimbo.
Well, I mean, Norvell, I saw that it was like 74 million. I was like, okay, keep him another year. That's fair.
That's what keeps his seat a little bit cooler. He's definitely in a hot seat with the fans, and so I get that, especially with all the war chant stuff and whatnot too that they did for the, they're like, we don't want to play that as much. It's just offensive or whatever. I don't know. And it's just like, okay, stupid.
So my thing is the fact that with Napier, probably I'm like 95% sure he's probably gonna leave within the next 2 weeks. But and if he does. We just mentioned the transfer portal. Do you think Lagway is going to enter the transfer portal at that point then and see what other cultures are better for him, or would he stay at Florida?
I think
I know we're talking about the future here, but I'm like,
I think it depends on the coach they get.
yeah.
Hold on. Yeah, he's gonna leave.
Ohio State.
Yeah.
Ohio State needs a quarterback every year.
I don't know. We got
now.
Julian saying was looking good when he got.
That's true. That's true. You guys are pretty solid now.
Yeah.
The
I think Napier's gone. I mean, like you said, 2 weeks. There's no way that he stays around too much longer. I mean, at this point, it's get him out. And I don't know, like that's the hard part is are you gonna step somebody up or are you gonna go external? And if you go external, the one that I've heard, like I know we've talked and we've heard Lane Kiffin a lot.
Yep.
The one that I heard was James Franklin.
I've heard that one too.
And somebody posted James Franklin, the James Franklin with the Florida hat and the Florida, jersey. And I was like, at that point, just save the 27 million and stay with Napier.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh no, James Franklin. So I got into this like back and forth and I was like, James Franklin is not like, well, look what he did with Vanderbilt. If he has the money that Florida does, he's going to dominate the SEC. And I was like, Penn State has more money than Vanderbilt, and he didn't come in and dominate the Big Ten. On the kind of the opposite side of that, he came in and he is third, fourth place.
He's been the best mid team in the Big Ten.
He is. He's consistent.
He's consistent.
He's consistently average.
23.
Yes. And just like Napier is consistently bad. I mean, it just is what it is. So, and I know that, people are going to look at different ways. James Franklin, I think at Vanderbilt just had, he caught lightning in a bottle. And, he had Jay Cutler, who was the best quarterback in Vanderbilt's history ever. Like he caught lightning in a bottle, but who are you thinking? I mean, Lane Kiffin, I don't think is going.
Fit it. Like James Franklin does not fit, I feel like, Florida at all.
No.
When I look at him, like I feel like it doesn't click for me.
Is it because he's bald? Is that why?
I guess, man. I think when I think bald, I think like Ohio State, Tennessee, those ones. Like
Ryan Day has some nice.
I don't know why he just kind of rings to me that when I see that.
Well, so I've heard from Florida fans, like people that like. They've been posting in their comments of who they would prefer to have. And of course, Lane Kiffin is like the one that has the most votes. The ones that like, it's like, we're on the Kiffin train. It's like, okay, well, you guys have to slow your roll because you guys haven't even fired your head coach yet. But one that surprised me was Kurt Signetti. That's actually one that I've been hearing as well, which I'm like, okay, like I can almost see that one. And the reason why is because he's brash enough, and he's enough of a Spurrier type like coach,
right?
That could find some success there, and it would be a step up from going from Indiana. Like you're talking about a much bigger program with a much higher ceiling. It would he would need to do a lot more rebuilding at Florida than he would ever have to do at Indiana, but. But I've got a feeling that Indiana's not going to want to let him go. He's doing really well. So,
I feel like for being 1 year in, I feel like Florida would have to offer him a huge bag.
Sure. The other one that I heard was Heupel, and I was like, Heupel's not going to Florida.
He's not going to Florida.
Heupel is very invested
for Florida.
I mean, if you're making a wish list, like that's fine. Like if this is like. Hey, it's like my kids when they're like, what do you want for Christmas? And they're like, oh, we want a car and a jet and, all this stuff. And you're like, yeah, okay, cool. Put it on the list, but put some realistic stuff down there.
We'll see what fits in the right there in the
stocking.
The stocking. Thank you.
Yeah, there we go. the thing.
Yeah, the little sock,
So here's my personal thing. Like I get that Florida is really hesitant about looking at a G5 coach again. Granted, they just looked at a bad G5 coach. I'm sorry. Sunbelt Billy, I hate to break it. The Sunbelt is one of the worst G5 conferences. So but if you want to look at somebody who has won almost everywhere he's gone and has a really high ceiling especially at the G5 level, but could even have an even higher ceiling at the P4 level, is John Summerall of Tulane.
Yeah.
He was at Troy last year. He's a baller. And like, I mean, the fact that he can go down to the wire almost is what it felt like this past weekend with a supposed powerhouse of the SEC called Oklahoma. With a self-proclaimed. I get it. Like
sooner than later.
Well, and like let's say they're not even in the SEC. They are the powerhouse of the Big 12, or they were at least. And so the fact that he was able to kind of stay in there for the majority of that game, and his team was able to stay in there, and they have such a major talent discrepancy.
Yep. Like
that shows not only a lot of balls, but it shows a lot of like just strategy. And I mean, he's got a lot of chutzpah, like he's just
right. He's got that chutzpah.
He's got what he needs.
It wasn't even just 1 week versus like SEC teams. He did it the week before versus Kansas State, which is another, I just think another high-ranked team. A lot of people are high on them. So it's like he's done it week in and week out. To credit to Michael's kind of point on that.
Yeah.
So obviously he could do something right with his coaching and his players that he has.
Well, and that's the work that those ADs really need to be doing, is looking at those, let's look at the coaches who are in those G5 positions who have coached, year in and year out a game, maybe 2 games against a P4 school, and they play them close, or they win. Yeah, exactly. Because those are the guys that you're like, you've got the strategy, you've got how to coach, because you're getting these guys, like you said, Michael, the talent discrepancy, and not only that, the depth, because people forget that's the biggest issue is in my opinion, is the depth. Like, yes, you've got talent, but any given Sunday, you could go out there and do something. But when you've got guys that are coming in wave after wave who are just on the level of your starters or better, that's a coaching thing. You're coaching these guys up, you're having them ready to play. And if you can get that type of guy into a power school with the talent and the resources and all that, that's the key to success. So really, that's, again, we're talking all this like Florida's like the news came out that Napier's gone, but
they play Mississippi State this coming weekend, and then they have a bye week. That bye week is going to set up for a new coach. That's all I'm saying. Like, I feel like it kind of lines up really well.
The thing that's kind of stinks for Florida fans is they do have a president that is a interim president. And the interim president has said or alluded to the fact in multiple occasions that he doesn't like to make changes to the athletic department when he's an interim,
which makes sense.
Totally get it. Yeah, but I'm just like, but you're dealing with a fan base that's probably going to be gone by midseason if you keep Napier there, and I don't know if you guys have seen the picture that's been floating around Twitter and whatnot. It's the picture of Napier and his wife after the game, and so many people are just like, man, it's just reminds us that he's human. And I was like, he's also about to get $27 million, so that makes that a whole lot less sad.
I think I'd rather be in his shoes right now than where I'm at.
Like,
regardless if I have a whole fan base of a school hating me, I'm like, I got 27 million.
Well, and to be fair, like, yeah, it's like, it's easy to sit on this side of it and be like, oh yeah, I'm fine with a whole bunch of people hating me for $27 million. Like, people hate me for free right now,
Sure.
But there is something like, it's not like these coaches go in and don't care. These coaches go in, they build relationships with their players and with their peers and all that. And they want to do a good job, right? I don't think there's any coach who's going to be like, hey, watch me drive this program into the ground. It's going to be awesome. Like, no, they go in there and they want to do stuff. And so, I do feel for him. And honestly, like, I feel for his wife, who's having to sit there and listen to horrible people, because every fan base has them.
Yep.
Talk about her husband the way that a lot of people are. And just, there is that personal side of things where it's like,
sure,
keep it professional, keep it in the realms. But so I get it. But in the same sense, I agree with you. At $27 makes that a little less fun.
I doubt it's going to end his coaching career. Like, he's going to get a job somewhere else. Like more than likely not an SEC school. Like, I mean, he's still going to find a job somewhere else.
He could go coach at a high school for free at this point. Like, you're talking generational wealth for failing at your job.
No, I mean,
Well,
yes.
and-
If
and-
he
and
wanted
the
to
thing-
redeem his name and he want like in the college ranks, he's gonna have another job opportunity. is what I'm saying.
there will be a group of 5 school who will hire him in a second. Like he will have another coaching job if he wants one.
Sure. Yeah,
So
exactly. Anyways, well, let's
Yep.
move on to some of the other games. We talked about some teams that barely survived week 3 in our intro. If going into this weekend, I told you that one of those teams was Georgia, would you have believed me?
I would say Georgia, similar to like the Michael Jordan game, they didn't have the flu game, but they had food poisoning from like a Kroger store they bought food at.
Probably. It's
That's
Kroger's-
what I would tell you.
all
That's what happens.
there too many of their players were late to the game and pulled over
Their
on the side of the
players
road.
were driving the bus,
Right.
like something along those lines.
So was it a case of Georgia didn't play well, or was it a case of Kentucky punched way above their weight class?
Kentucky's defense was playing out of their minds. Like, let's just be real. Like, they were playing out of their minds. They were playing really good. They're playing out of their minds. Yeah, they're playing really good. No, they were playing
They were
great.
wild.
And the interesting thing is Georgia didn't look bad. Like, it didn't look like they weren't playing like themselves. They looked like themselves. They were playing like themselves. Kentucky just had the answers. And I think that it was a coaching, and, I think they did a good job of containing Georgia. So I'm actually giving this to Kentucky and saying Kentucky played well. And Georgia played well. And this was just a Kentucky kind of dialed the right stuff up.
I mean, I would agree with Luke on that. I mean, it said that Kirby Smart and Mark Stoops have actually a really strong relationship just like between them. So basically, if you're playing your friend, and especially with high stakes like that, you're gonna get you already know how they function.
Right.
You already know what they're gonna play. So like you're very familiar with them. Like, I'm not saying you're always gonna outdo them and get it right, but you're gonna have your day. And I feel like it was definitely Kentucky's day. And personally, I feel like they should have won it. I feel like they're a play or two away from winning.
Sure.
Going for that fourth. Not going for that fourth.
But
Punting the ball.
like 2 minutes left or something.
Yeah, that as soon as they walked out with the punt, and I get where they're going from because their defense was playing great, and so I understand kind of the thought process, but that's one of those times when, for me, I'm just going, it's Kirby Smart. You've got a veteran quarterback on the other side.
Yep.
You've got a good offensive line, and you've got weapons. I'm not giving them the ball back.
Georgia's so full of like 5-star players and just talented players overall. And where players kind of will stand out from other ones is like, it's that one player that can make a play when it really matters. And Georgia has a whole team that can potentially do that on, again, any given night. And they were able to do that. They were able to get 2 first downs that they needed to end the game.
Yep.
Sure. Well, and the other thing is too, that fumble that happens right at the end of the game. There was there was such a possibility for that Kentucky defender to grab that ball. If he had just if you looked at the way that he was playing, he looked towards the ref instead of looking at the ball.
Yeah.
And that type of stuff, like that's type of stuff that shows. And I was looking at, it's just like a video. It's just like, hey, you want to see the difference between a team that is coached to win championships versus a team that's coached to try to just win a football game. You look at that game. You look at those. You see the Georgia player who is 5 yards away, sees the ball fumbled and is running towards it, versus the Kentucky player who made the play and and are you getting some instability there? I think you're back.
I think we got back.
And but who made the play and came back and was just like, oh yeah, I don't understand. Ref, come on, step in. He's like turning his back to the ball. It's like, no, play till the play is ended. Like, fight for that ball. And so
to that as well. That I know you mentioned it in our group chat, Michael, that interception that was called back.
Yep.
Like, I feel like that should have been a play where basically the touchdown that Kentucky needed to win the game, and that being called back. I've seen that replayed so many different times on different views. I'm like, I don't see why they called that back.
Yeah, well, and so the argument that I continuously hear from Georgia fans and from other Kentucky fans that are trying to claim that they know ball, is they're like, but if it was a completed pass, then he'd be down by contact because or down by the ground. Like that's how it's like. You don't understand it. An interception's never a completed pass. It's a completed pass to the other team.
Right.
This was a deflection. So it looks like his hand is underneath the ball. You don't know how much of the ball is touching the ground, if any of the ball is touching the ground. And let's be real. It's Georgia. The likelihood of their receivers not knowing how to catch a ball properly, very, very low. So they're going to protect that ball like crazy. The thing is, it just the amount of force of him flipping around again. If it had just been called an incomplete pass, it would have stood. It 100% would have stood. But the fact that it was considered a pick six should have just stood. It wasn't. You couldn't confirm it, but it should have just stood. And I do think that Kentucky was robbed there. Like another team that unfortunately didn't survive week 3, but their opponent did survive week 3. LSU and South Carolina. Talk about some bad officiating. I don't know, Dennis. You've coached kids with defense and stuff like that at the collegiate level. Would you have corrected the kid that gave the little shove to Nussmeier?
I would have, just because it's a difficult answer, but I would have for the most part, because like for one, that was a DB that picked it off. Nussmeier had no chance of catching up to his speed. All you have to do was literally stay in front of him. Mind you, it wasn't the hardest shove to begin with.
No.
So like, I wouldn't necessarily told him like, hey, you did bad play, but I would tell him like, hey, you know how much these quarterbacks are protected and watched over nowadays. You couldn't have done so hard. So it would be a halfway, like telling him like, hey, you're not in the wrong, but also understand your situation, the situational awareness type thing.
Right.
So it'd be kind of a mixture. It'll be more leaning on that, where I would emphasize, hey, you are not in the wrong. It's just know your surroundings.
And that's what's so hard, I think, for everybody that's, again, to say it again, our age and up, is interceptions were a chance to hit the quarterback.
Yes.
That's what it used to be. 10 years ago, it was like, oh, there's an interception. Everybody looked for the quarterback. And so it is a hard time to watch that. And I mean, to give the quarterback credit, he sold it. Like that was a LeBron James style flop right there. He did it. So give him credit. But again, that is one of those, it's so hard to watch, especially when you get to the end of that game and you recognize that LSU, now South Carolina should have held on. Like there's no reason that comeback ever should have happened.
Sure.
It's not just one play, all those things that everybody says, one play doesn't win or lose the game. But those are just hard to watch. You get to the end and those are hard.
I give you credit, Luke, because of the fact that like as a defensive player, there's very few times where you're actually excited to block. And I'm telling you, as a coach, as a person who played who's majority on the defensive side of the ball, I hated blocking, which is one of the reasons why I chose to be on the defensive side. But if you gave me a chance to block for a teammate because of a fumble recovery or a pick, I'm throwing my body. I don't care if it's a lineman or a quarterback. If it's a quarterback, I'll probably put more emphasis to it.
Right.
I'll be spearing that person like I'm Bill Goldberg back in WWE, WCW type thing. But so I can't blame him there.
No,
like you said, but that was a different time, different era of football, and that's why I'm like, I don't blame the kid, but it's just like,
you have to.
Nice acting job right there.
and that's the hard part, is because it's not just football anymore. You have to recognize that. Okay, I'm going against this quarterback who is the face of the league, the face of the team, so I can get in his way, but I can't hit him. Or, hey, there's this receiver that is coming across the middle. I can't really hit him. I mean, there's just too many. Like, yeah, we can get into the rules another time, but you have to be thinking. You can't just play reactionary football anymore. You actually have to take that split second to go, should I do this? Should I hit this guy? So, but again, it was South Carolina. That play should not have won or lost them that game.
No,
but they were still robbed.
Sure. Well, they had a couple other calls that were also just atrociously bad. But again, they left it in the hands of the refs, and you shouldn't get to your point. You shouldn't get to a point in your game where you're leaving it into the officials' hands. So
which Kansas State did not do.
Yeah,
they did not let the officials make any. And I'm pretty sure that I chose Kansas State. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty good on my picks here.
You switched your pick right before we went live. You switched to Kansas State.
The gut.
Yeah. Or you just went with Vegas. I don't know.
Oh, I don't gamble. I don't even look at Vegas.
That was the Vegas odds that Kansas State was going to win. That was a really good game for the first two quarters.
Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't.
Arizona did not look like they did last year.
And the weird part about it, when you go through and you look at you can kind of pick stats out, right? Everybody who knows, enough about football to kind of look at stats, you can kind of look at breakdowns and see where stuff happened. But when you look through the stats, everything is just so even, right? Obviously, Arizona had, I think, one turnover. There was an interception. But, Fafita had 268 yards, no touchdowns. Avery Johnson threw for 156. The time of possession was just about the same. It was like 30 minutes to 29 minutes. Total yards were the same.
30 seconds apart.
Literally. Yeah. It's everything was just equal. It's just who did what needed to be done in those times and with those yards. So Kansas State definitely came out, and it did. It just looked like they took Arizona looked like a team who the wind was taken out of their sails. And I don't know why. I don't know why they played that way. There's nothing that they've done that, the two games previous to make you go, oh, something's going on. They're not in sync. Like they're having these issues. But Kansas State just came out and whooped them.
They did. And it was I got into the third quarter and I was like, I kind of am done with this game. I still had it on in the background because Noah Fafita could make a comeback.
Right.
I was just like,
he has the talent, he has the ability.
He does, yeah. It's just that Arizona to me this year at least is starting to feel like a more talented, but albeit only slightly more talented version of Colorado, in the sense that you got two major playmakers and not much else around them.
Right.
And that's frustrating because they were gelling last year, and I get it. They lost their head coach, but the majority of the team stayed. And so that's what's weird, is the fact that you retain so much and your culture on the field looks so much different.
Last year they were such an interesting team for I feel like I forgot how many losses they had last year. I think it was 4 or something like that.
It was,
and I feel like they're such a much better team than that. Really your overall record necessarily says. They gave every team a battle essentially.
Yep.
Yeah, even their losses were you still played really well. There was no game where they looked bad. That again, it was a second half in this one, but they just didn't look good. But maybe it's my fault. They can blame me. I'm the one that picked against them. So
sure, you picked against your Noah
odds, man.
I picked against Noah Fafita.
It's all good. I picked against Missouri and they still proved me wrong. To some degree. I'll put it this way. Boston College, if they had just they also only have a few playmakers. If they had one or two more playmakers on their team, they probably would have won that game.
Yep.
because I mean their defense did a decent job. Their offense got into some grooves early on, and then after this is what baffles me is that teams know if you're up on an opponent or you're doing well against an opponent going into halftime, that opposing team that's losing or is taking some blows from you, they're gonna make adjustments. Why are you not making proper adjustments on the other side where like you come back out with the same plan and you're like, I don't know why it didn't work again. That's so weird. And that's just what it looked like with Boston College. I'm like, guys, you can't just continue to do what you're doing. They will adjust. They are a deep team. And but Missouri made so many boneheaded mistakes. They had a bazillion penalties, which were all deserved. I saw every single one of them. And as I said to the group chat, I lost all semblance of respect for Luther Burden in that game. Like,
I will say the mouthpiece one where he took the mouthpiece
doesn't matter.
It was a reaction to the other player taking his mouthpiece.
Yep.
However, again, this goes back to, what we were talking about a little bit ago, where you have to be mentally prepared because it's always the second person. I remember my coaches telling me that all the time. They're going to catch the second person.
Yep.
It's the second act, never the first act.
It's never the first act. So, again, I'm just saying the reaction was, I think, warranted, but it was dumb.
Yeah. And the other thing is too, all with all of that as well, is that literally like the next play, he then roughed right outside of the after like it. I mean, I think he blindsided blocked the guy out of bounds or something like that. It was. I'm like, again, just unnecessary. And he has the audacity to act like he's the victim of all of it. And that type of stuff. I don't care for any of that. I don't care for any player that acts like that. And I think that Drinkwitz did the right thing of, they had a media timeout and the video that shows him charging across the field and screaming Burden's ear out. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, that's exactly what the kid needed because he's being an idiot. And he also didn't look phenomenal that game either from a player perspective. He hasn't looked good all year. So but they could be saving him. I get it.
Missouri just, I think, has the kryptonite for Ohio State and former Ohio State coaches.
Probably.
That's just a Missouri thing.
Maybe. So. I don't know. I mean, I'll put Boston College put up way more points than Ohio State did.
That's true.
That's definitely true.
At home, at Missouri, which is impressive. So, but and then the last of the games, we got to finally see. One, Dennis was right again. We picked Oregon over Oregon State, right?
Yeah, no, I chose Oregon. Honestly, though, I did think it was gonna be a closer game.
Yeah,
mostly kind of like putting on the rivalry a bit, also because of the fact that Oregon literally just not have been able to play right. Like, I knew, like, I was hoping eventually they were going to start waking up, and I hope the way this game kind of finished off in the second half, I really hope that's setting the tone on how they're going to be playing going forward. The first half wasn't bad. It was actually a solid first half. I feel like they played better in the first half than they played in the other two games, to be honest. But the second half of the game, you both even said it, where like this is the Oregon that we all been waiting on to be.
Yep. This is what we expected.
Right. Yep. So if this is anything a wake-up call, I feel like it's the perfect time. You played versus your rival. So now you have the whole season, the rest of the season to kind of play into your conference and continue setting that tone. Because Oregon State, even though, the Pac-2, it's still not a team that you can just simply overlook that easily as well. And again, it's a rivalry game. They're going to, more times than not, it's always going to push you to the very edge of things.
Well, you know why Dillian Gabriel played so much better this past Saturday than he's played all year, right?
And why is that, Michael?
There's a big thing that happened this past week. His fiance, his girlfriend said yes to getting married. So that's what
to him.
To him, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. So he was clearly just really nervous about that entire thing, and so it was really of the other games.
That's what's happened. Yeah, I saw everybody mad at him for that. Like, no, you need to focus on football.
Yeah.
Forget this. It's like, these guys do have lives outside of football, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like Dylan Gabriel should have a life. He's been into like 2 other different schools, so like I hope he has a life. Like he's been coast to coast.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
I just saw that. I was like, oh, people are gonna blame that on blame his.
It made him weak in the knees. That's why he couldn't play during the game.
Right. Well, at least he's getting practice with the victory formation with the kneeling.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, there you go.
I do have to do one little shout out before we move on to our week 4 picks. A friend of the channel.
We have friends.
We do have some friends. A friend of the channel was actually honored at UT this past weekend. He was honored at UT as like one of their, as like the predominant player, like player of history or whatnot for them, because he set some records for them. And as a kicker, he's an actual personal friend of the channel. We've all met with him and whatnot, and eventually we'll hopefully get an episode where we'll be able to sit down and talk with him, and he can give us his ideas of what he thinks about NIL and things like that, and especially what's going on with these kids.
Maybe you can teach me how to kick.
That'd be cool.
Be impressive.
Yeah. I mean, he may be able to. I know he knows how to kick and knows how.
I know. Can he teach
people to kick too?
He knows how to teach people because that's what he does. He teaches kids how to kick. That's one of his things. So
that's just a shout out to him.
Can you teach a 40-year-old man with bad knees?
That'd be interesting. We'll have to find out. So stay tuned to a future episode, whenever that's going to be. I don't know yet.
We'll give you the date.
Yeah, we'll give you the date. Anyway, so let's move on to our game of the week for week 4.
Sweet.
All right. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I'll take it. So mine is going to be USC Michigan.
Oh.
I think for me, this is one of those games, we watched the USC LSU game, and it was kind of confusing because I expected the offenses to be a little bit better than the defenses were. And it was kind of flip-flopped, and we didn't know. I couldn't tell if are these both good teams? Are they both mediocre teams? What's going on? I think a lot of people, especially in the Big Ten world, have kind of crowned USC as this, second or third best team in the conference right now, which based on their record, you can go that way. So we don't know what's going on with them. Michigan is kind of in the exact same boat. Like Michigan, while they're winning, well, two of 3, they're winning against weaker opponents and not looking very good. They're in the middle of a quarterback controversy. Nobody really wants Warren to be playing. They want their dual threat quarterback, Alex Orji, to come in, even though he's not really a dual threat, because the reason they don't play him is because he can't throw. So it's going to be an interesting game.
A lot of RPOs, man.
A lot of RP. Well, but it's not even run pass option. It's run. It's run option.
Run pass.
Am I going to run, or am I going to toss it over to this guy, or am I going to throw it in the dirt over here? I think it'll be an interesting game. I think that we're going to see, because Michigan's defense still, while they haven't played up to kind of their expectations, they still have the players. They still have the guys. So I think we'll kind of see what USC's offense is going to be. I'm still kind of waiting for Michigan to look good. Like there's that, they're the defending national champions. Asterisk, whatever you want to say. They still are the defending national champions. And so it's kind of that, I'm just waiting. Like they should still be good.
Sure.
They should still be good. And they're not. But I think it'll be a fun game. My hope, I'm picking USC to win.
You're a good man, Luke. Good man.
Well, this is tough, because this is like, do I want to be stabbed in the left arm or the right arm? Like, I don't really want either to win, but USC is going to win. I'm not going to say this is going to be like Texas. I don't think it's going to be like Texas. I would take the over. I don't even know what the bet is, but I'd take the over. Let's see what it is. Michigan.
Yeah, I'm pulling that up right now, because I'm just like, I don't know what the over is either.
I think it's like no.
the over on this particular game. It is so the 47 and a half points, and
It's 5.5.
Yeah, well, negative 6.5 according to ESPN bet.
Okay.
For USC.
I'm on Sportsbook, so
More
they've got it at 5.5. So yeah, I would take the over.
So no, I mean I get that. I get that. So Dennis, you want to go next? Or do you want me to go next?
You know, I'll go.
Dennis, go next.
Just because I feel like Michael, that way I can leave you a little bit more time for you to talk on yours. My game, the reason why I say that is a little bit of an older crowd. They're very much around closer to our age, and they're like in their 7th year, so they could be taking a nap by the time these night games kind of kick off afterwards. It's the battle of the 7th year veteran. It's Utah versus Oklahoma State. So to me, it's gonna be interesting, and it's an interesting game. Before I saw that Cam Rising was actually going to come back, not for the season again, but to be able to play this game. I don't know if he's coming back for his 8th year. That's yet to be determined. I know we joked around about that, but he was out last game, and his replacement Isaac Wilson did pretty well. But if Cam Rising is actually fully healthy, then I feel like it's going to be Utah's game to win, and it's going to come down to the quarterbacks. I think Cam Rising is a much better quarterback than Alex Bowman, and that's where I'm going to have it. I think Utah is actually Utah is the favorite. But I believe the over, let me see, on that is Utah by 2. Like, which is interesting. I would have thought it would be a bit more.
That's interesting because again, ESPN has Oklahoma State by 2.5. So
Right.
man, they're dividing that right down the hair, just right down the middle.
Yeah. Like I know Oklahoma, it's a home game for Oklahoma State. So, but
that's crazy. There's like 14 years of quarterbacking.
Mind you, these 2 quarterbacks are older than quarterbacks that were drafted 2-3 years ago in the NFL right now. So it's actually really kind of funny saying that.
But probably their combined snap count is probably greater than the combined snap count for their entire other team, like both teams together. Is probably.
I would not be surprised by that.
Yeah, that's possibly.
I would not be surprised. So I'm with Utah. Utah on this. I feel like they're going to actually end up winning the game. And that's because Oklahoma State has mostly kind of struggled, and I feel like they kind of escaped a couple games their previous weeks, while Utah, even with Cam Rising out last year, the year before, they still find ways to win. So I feel like, hey, now if he's healthy, they should have no problem winning this game.
They just need him there as a mascot. Like they don't even need him on the field. He just needs to be around.
I feel like, yeah, offer him a job at this point. He's not going to the NFL.
No.
Very true.
All right. So Michael, we all have our guesses.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with Nebraska. I'm just kidding. So
Friday night game.
My game of the week is, and this is 100% a homer pick, but it's also because it's going to be one of the best games of the weekend.
Who's UTVO? UTVO.
UT versus OU. And yes, you Texas fans might be confused, going, we're not playing. Well, you're not UT.
Right.
That's TEX. Sorry. That's I didn't make those rules. The SEC did. But Tennessee versus Oklahoma, there's just so many things surrounding this game. Tennessee's going to Norman for the first time in 20 years. You've got Heupel, the head coach of Tennessee, going back to Norman for the first time in 10 years since
now.
Oh no, he's not going to go back. And it's what's interesting is that we just lost Dennis. It's all good. We'll continue on. He just quit. Well, there he goes. He's back here. Oh, there's Dennis. Oh, there he is. Okay.
You're on the bottom now.
You're on the bottom now. Sorry. The screens all shift around when you leave. But there's some interesting things. Like you got Brett Venables was actually one of the defensive, if I remember correctly, was one of the defensive coordinators for Oklahoma when Heupel was the offensive coordinator. And so you've actually got kind of like a kind of a juxtaposition of some pretty interesting, like now they're two head coaches and they both have very distinct styles. The arguably Heupel has refined his style of offense a lot more over the past 10 years. It does not look at all like what he ran at Oklahoma.
No.
And it's a lot faster. But the thing that's going to be interesting is the Tennessee when the season started. Tennessee was not favored. It was Oklahoma 6.5. It was -6.5 for Oklahoma. The lines have now swapped. It is now -7, -7.5 for Tennessee. And this went from a 50-50 game to like Tennessee's expected win being 70+%. And I have spent the better part of the past week talking with Oklahoma fans, which I will just put it out there. I've met some incredibly awesome people, just talking with them and stuff like that online. Some incredibly nice guys and gals. And I can appreciate their rabid love of their team. Because I have to. If I didn't like that, then I'd be, throwing rocks in a glass house because walls are notorious online. But I will say the one thing that has been consistent with the few OU fans that are out there that are trying to rival the Tennessee fans for craziest fan base on the internet, is they consistently, and they're getting backed up by Georgia and Bama as well, Bama fans as well, is they keep on saying Tennessee's played nobody. Oklahoma's also played nobody. I hate to break that to them. I don't understand why they consistently ignore that fact, but they're like, oh, but you guys played the worst team in college football. It's like, yes, and you played the fourth worst team in college football. There's a big difference in the point spread there. We beat them 71-0, and you beat them 51-3 or 51-6. And you only got that because at the end you finally could start actually marching down the field all the time. You've had struggle wins against every single opponent aside from potentially Temple all year. And if your team is as elite as they are, and I'm not saying that they haven't held back their playbook, because I 100% believe they have, just like Heupel has held back his playbook. He has probably dialed something up particularly interesting for this game. But the fact that there's this entire, we're just a better team because we have more national championships or because we won more conference championships. I was like, those don't matter this year. They don't matter at all. We have more Heisman contenders. Okay. We have more Heisman winners. Okay.
They also have the oldest quarterback on roster.
Huh? Oh, it's fair. There you go. I mean, fair. But here's the thing.
Like, if they want to get another W,
I'm like, yeah, sure. But the last natty you guys had, our head coach got you. So you can sit there and talk about it all day long, but that was 24 years ago. That's just the saddest, people as Tennessee fans talking about how they're still relevant in the natty scene because they won a natty in 98. We're not. It's been almost 30 years.
Right.
And so it's like so it's just one of those things. Like, I honestly feel like these two teams are closer. Their fan bases are closer to each other than they realize, from a standpoint of the way that they look at their team and the way that they approach they approach their conference, they approach their rivals and stuff like that. The way that I've seen Oklahoma fans go after Tennessee has been very similar, but also back Tennessee up at the same time when Texas steps into the room. Right. Very similar to
it's like this beautiful mixture of like passion and delusion.
Yeah, and
it's
arguably not even arrogance. It's just delusion.
yeah.
And so I can respect it because that's 100% the Vol fan base.
Mhm.
With all that said,
Vols by 50.
we're gonna buy 50. I do think that the Vols are gonna win this game. I personally do hope it is a closer game in the sense of I hope that both teams really do get the stress, like they get the stress of like the more talented roster on both sides of the ball, and they both get to become better from that. Obviously, a team is going to lose. I do think that that's going to be Oklahoma because Oklahoma has the weaker offense. I think Oklahoma's defense and Tennessee's defense is closer ranked than Oklahoma wants to admit. Right now, Tennessee's defense statistically is second best in the country. That means absolutely nothing. Just like Oklahoma's defense is 109th worst in the country on third and fourth downs. Also means nothing right now.
Right.
Because those games also don't mean anything yet. This game means something to both teams. And I think the storyline, which again, it's not Heupel's going in for a bloodbath. I mean, if Heupel gets the chance to run up the score, he will.
Yep.
That's one thing he showed with the Kent State game is he will. But I also think that Heupel has a ton of respect for Oklahoma, has a ton of respect for that fan base, and is gonna do what he can to make it as much of a fun game as possible. But I just think there's too much talent on Tennessee's roster, and there's too many playmakers that Oklahoma can't contend with on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball. So I would say again, not betting anything, obviously, because that would be stupid. I'd say Tennessee's probably going to win by 10 points to 2 touchdowns.
Okay.
So, not Vol by 50. But if they do Vol by 50, I'll be happy.
Hey, that'd be impressive.
If they do, I'll be dancing. If they don't, I'm not going to I'm not going to get like dog crap out of a bag.
Right. Oh man, that guy.
I don't know, man.
I don't know where he is.
I think honestly, the reason why FSU continues to lose is because that guy has not fulfilled his promise to the internet.
If they lose another one, they need to find that man and force it down his throat.
Well, I mean, it's completely illegal to do so, but you know what? I agree. They should totally.
As long as I'm not doing it, I don't care.
Accidents happen,
Yeah,
he tripped and had this big dog turd shoved up his mouth.
Anyways,
all
right. Well, again, thank you guys for joining us tonight for this week's tailgate. We look forward to this weekend of awesome football. Come back next week, grab a drink, and join the conversation.